Congratulations. You are the NBA Kia MVP.
When you've been called an MVP by some and a free throw merchant by others, your game is polarizing to say the least. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander won the 2024-25 MVP vote in a landslide, so the MVP crowd was certainly proven right, triggering a whole new wave of discussion over what makes a player the most valuable. But that's not the point of today's video. We're here to see if the free throw merchant crowd has a point or if they're just hating. For many fans, the first time they really heard about SGA was after his rookie season when the Clippers pulled the trigger on a blockbuster trade that sent him and a treasure trove of draft picks to OKC in return for Paul George. Granted, the trade also paved the way for signing Kawhi Leonard, but it was still an insane haul, and the main reason why most fans were freaking out was the draft picks. 5 first-rounders and 2 swaps. SGA was seen as a cherry on top, a decent young guard that had potential and fit OKC's new rebuild timeline. 2 years later, he was becoming the future face of the franchise, showing significant growth in pretty much every statistical category and cracking the 20-point per game barrier. In 2023-24, he was scoring just over 30 a game, and he asserted himself as a legitimate MVP candidate for the first time. And that brings us to the current 2024-25 season, where SGA is the MVP and where he led his team to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012. But his rise has not been without controversy. The label of free throw merchant or unethical hooper is something that has been often applied to SGA, especially this season. You often hear opposing fans chanting free throw merchant when he's at the line,
Minnesota needed some size here for the final,
which is often, and even Doris Burke called him a free throw merchant on national television during a live broadcast.
He's a great free throw shooter.
If you're on social media, you had to have seen at least one meme about SGA at the free throw line because they are everywhere. Just in case you're not familiar, those labels are applied to players that are perceived to be gaming the whistle and either exaggerating minor contact or simply flopping in order to get to the free throw line. SGA is far from the only guy who had those labels applied to him over the past couple of years. Think of James Harden's glory days in Houston, where he was being so over the top that they literally had to change the rules to put a stop to his antics. Joel Embiid, if he is even healthy and playing, falls down at the slightest hint of contact in the paint like he was just shot by a sniper. He's a 7-footer and he's a really strong dude, so this just makes him look softer than a marshmallow. But since he still doesn't know what the Eastern Conference Finals look like, he isn't getting as much hate as he probably should for his flopping antics. Trae Young became known and drew fan hate for his stop and bump moves, but his only real playoff accomplishments include becoming the mayor of New York City and making the conference finals that one time when Ben Simmons chickened out so hard that the entire 76ers team fell apart the following summer. In other words, his lack of postseason success allowed him to fly a bit under the radar. In a completely unexpected turn of events, the Knicks became a decent NBA team and made the Eastern Conference Finals this year, which put Jalen Brunson's game under a bigger lens than usual. Turns out that dude draws a lot of fouls and even seems to rely on the whistle more than his own bag at times. His saving grace is being undersized and the fact that there exists a bigger fish in these playoffs, both figuratively and literally. As a 6'6" point guard and reigning MVP, SGA has no such excuses. He made the NBA Finals this year, forcing even more eyes on him, but his game was under the microscope from the moment he started gaining serious traction in the MVP race last year. His fans praised him for how aggressive he was driving to the rim and argued that he gets fouled a lot because he drives a lot and defenders have no way of stopping him other than fouling. Haters claim that the motivation behind his drives to the rim is foul hunting first and scoring second. The fact is that the dude gets buckets. He led the league in scoring this season, and even if you take away made free throws, he'd still be the scoring leader. With the number of accusations being thrown around, you'd think SGA leads the league in average free throws attempted. No, that would actually be Giannis, and by quite a margin. Giannis has actually been the league leader in this stat for the past 3 seasons, but you don't see people calling him out for it because of 2 things. First, the dude's simply a force of nature. You either foul him or someone gets posterized. Maybe even both of those happen at once. Second, he shoots free throws so poorly that it makes 0 sense for him to foul bait. As hard as it may be to believe, Shai has never led the league in attempted free throws per game. Giannis shot 10.6 freebies per game this season, while SGA is in second place with only 8.8. SGA still has a healthy lead over Trae Young, who's third on that list with 7.4 per game. Spots 4 and 5 are occupied by the usual suspects, Jalen Brunson and James Harden. Shai does lead the league in free throws made this year with 7.9 per game. He even led the league the year before, which shows that he not only gets a lot of trips to the charity stripe, but he makes them count at a pretty impressive rate. If we look at every single player and every single season in NBA history, Shai's career best free throw attempt numbers per game, 10.9 from the 2022-23 season, ranks as the 43rd highest number in history. His 8.8 average from this year is ranked 215th. Considering how insane some of those early NBA seasons were, Shai's rankings are a lot better than they may appear at first, but there were still plenty of other players with higher free throw numbers. Leading the league in scoring without free throws this year, and the all-time rankings I just mentioned hardly paint a picture of a player who molds his entire game around free throws and foul baiting. However, the numbers are always just one part of the bigger picture. If you watch him play, you'll quickly see that the hate for SGA doesn't come from the number of fouls he draws as much as from the way he draws them. He's an absolute master at manipulating defenders and anticipating contact. Once he gets into his move, he's often going to either instantly react to the slightest mistake that the defender makes to initiate contact, or he'll actively force the defender into a situation where they're forced to foul. As much as you may hate seeing him do it, you have to admit that it takes a lot of skill and body control to pull it off as consistently as he does. The skill part of his foul baiting can even be respected to a degree, but many fans can't get past his tendency to make foul hunting his primary goal on some possessions. He'll desperately throw himself into a defender while trying to toss the ball toward the rim in hopes of hearing the whistle. Hell, he'll sometimes make minor contact look like he got hit by a train, or he'll straight up flop to get the whistle. When this works, he gets a trip to the line, and more often than not, he leaves with 2 points. When it doesn't work, it looks downright embarrassing. There was some hope among NBA fans that his antics wouldn't work in the playoffs, where the refs tend to swallow their whistles and allow more physicality. Tough luck. Shai's free throw attempts per game went up from 8.8 in the regular season to 9.2 in the playoffs before the start of the finals. The whistle is as bad as it's ever been. If you need an example, look no further than this clip of SGA getting a foul call for falling down on his own.
To Anthony Edwards, it doesn't matter if it's transition or in a pick and roll. And I don't know if that's a foul. I think he lost his balance. We're gonna have to check that out on replay. Oh no, he just tripped. That's the right call. They're reviewing that one.
Yep, they're going to challenge it.
Gilgeous-Alexander pulls back. Mobley stays in front of him. Boy, that's some good. Oh, they call a foul on Mobley. Nobody likes the call in this building.
The whistle is a topic we have to touch on. It seems that some players can get whacked with a baseball bat and you'll hear nothing but crickets, while the refs will call a foul if you look at certain players the wrong way. The opposite is also true. Some guys can perform MMA moves without any consequence, and others get called for fouls with minimum contact. Is that whistle bias the fault of the players? Usually not. Most of the time, the blame lies with the refs. However, some guys, Draymond Green, have built reputations that don't help them in the slightest. Guys like that will be under increased scrutiny from most refs, and they won't be given the benefit of the doubt. On the other hand, refs often let guards get away with insane amounts of contact when guarding big men. Look no further than the insanity Alex Caruso got away with on Jokic in Game 7 of the OKC vs Denver series if you want an example. Rookies often won't get calls in 50-50 or even 60-40 situations simply because they don't have any pull with the refs. Star players will get away with more than they have any right to. Luka Doncic complains to refs and argues calls all the time. He gets slapped with technicals, but not nearly as often as he should. And some players simply get a lot of love from refs for reasons that aren't obvious to anyone. SGA looks like one of these players because how else would you explain some of the calls he gets? The conspiracy crowd will claim that the NBA instructs its refs to protect some of their star players. While there are plenty of believable NBA conspiracies, this isn't one of them. Look at Jokic, a huge superstar who gets whacked so much that bloody arms at the end of the game are a usual sight for him. Yet he doesn't get nearly as many calls as the blood would indicate. The rulebook definitely favors offense, but the refs seem selective in how they apply the rules to certain players. At the end of the day, humans are biased, and refs are people like you or me, even if you may not feel that way when they make a questionable call against your favorite team. If you ask what makes refs act more favorably towards certain players, or why they seem to love giving SGA so many foul calls, I don't have an answer for you. It's much easier to answer why they act less favorably towards certain players. It's either a reputation thing or personal animosity. Scott Foster's treatment of CP CP3 immediately comes to mind there. The only theory for why SGA gets such favorable whistles is that he's being groomed to be the next face of the league. Your first thought upon hearing this would probably be that there are much better choices than Shai. For starters, Ant and Luka are superstars that have much broader appeal. There's also the fact that pushing someone as the face of the league can have the exact opposite effect, making fans hate that player rather than love him. Adam Silver is probably the only person that knows for sure, and unfortunately, he wasn't available for an interview for this video, so you'll have to draw your own conclusions on the matter. Fan response to Shai and OKC potentially winning the Larry O'Brien trophy this year will play a huge role in determining how the NBA handles its foul baiting problem. They've already changed the rulebook to combat Harden's antics a few years ago, and they cracked down on flopping when it became clear that fans were leaving because of it. They could do it again if SGA's tendencies start driving fans away in large enough numbers. Or they might not do nothing at all. This is the NBA after all, and we all know how capable they are of making short-sighted decisions that turn out to be bad for the overall health of the game. At the end of the day, you're the fan. You're free to love whatever kind of basketball you want, and if you're in the majority, the NBA will adjust course to suit your particular tastes because that's what's going to get them the most money possible. So tell us where you stand on the SGA issue in the comments below. Is he an insane offensive talent that no defender can stay in front of? Or is he ruining an entire generation of young hoopers with his unethical playstyle? Let us know what you think and subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you in the next one.